willing to do what it takes to get there.
I think he signed to One Warrior.
Yeah, I was gonna say that he signed to One Warrior. I think he did an episode.
I'm on Deol. Those guys, I would love to.
I think any fighter has a chance.
Very good evening. Welcome to our Mma Facebook page. I'm Rashid Saleh, your host and also president of Malaysia MMA Mma. Alongside with me is my co-host Daniel Chief from South 4 Malaysia. And welcome to another MMA talk show this Monday night, 9 p.m. Malaysia, 2 p.m. British Standard Time. And welcome to all our audiences out there. As we have a very interesting topic that we're going to be discussing with our guests. For those of you who have just joined us, don't forget to subscribe and also like our Facebook page and all our social media platforms as well. Now, Daniel, are you all set for tonight? Well, tonight.
I'm excited for tonight.
He's excited because Daniel himself, he was the one who suggested this topic. Because we've had a lot of conversations about it around the world, especially here in Malaysia as well. And of course, because of the lockdown, we had a lot of time to talk about it and not go anywhere. So what is it we're going to be talking about? Well, have a look at this.
Both.
Explain to us.
Untuk professional is the entertainment. Untuk amateur, it's a sport.
The sport itself is it can be entertaining if it's well organized, whether it's amateur rule set or professional rule set.
I mean, for professional, definitely it's more to entertainment, and for the amateur, we are looking more into the sport development. Yes.
So there you have it. That is what we're going to be talking about, is MMA a sport. Now we've got four lovely guests that we're going to be inviting onto the show. Let's get the ladies on first, as they say ladies before gents, except if you're in Japan. Right. First and foremost, you all know her here in Malaysia, especially if you're from the MMA community. She is the gold medalist at the Asian Open last year, 2019. She's also the bronze medalist at strawweight category at the Worlds, at the IMMAF World Championship last year in Bahrain, the first ever Malaysian athlete to gain any sort of medal for any of the IMMAF championships at the world stage. So let's welcome her for the second time on our show, Colleen Agustin. Hi, Colleen, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back here.
Right, and this time I'm not, you can actually hear and see me without me lagging. So we actually have a conversation this time. I'm not going to ask you about your red hair, but we'll talk about that much later. Right. Our next guest, we've worked with her at the championships prior to this, at the IMMAF World Championships, and actually, and before as well at the Asian Open. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications for IMMAF, the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation, and is probably pretty much going to be the focus person for this subject. So let's welcome her on, Isobel Carnwarth. Thank you very much, Izzy, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
First and foremost, thank you very much, because you had a bout of COVID-19 very much earlier, a couple of months ago, and you've recovered from it. So we're very thankful for you to be alive and well and healthy. You're looking very healthy.
Thank you.
All right. Next guest has covered MMA in Malaysia for quite a long time. He's been around obviously during our Mma days as well. Still looking as young as ever. And he is now, of course, obviously still with Astro Awani. I almost said Arena because I was at Astro Arena. Let's welcome the editor of Astro Arena, Hyder, Yutim. Hi, Hyder. How are you?
Awani. Hi, how are you?
Salam
Thank you so much, guys, for having me tonight.
Thank you. Now, last but not least, he is my partner for another show. I'm going to plug this in. A show that we are called the RSS with OC, Sports Centric, another online show that we do for YouTube. Do subscribe and like that one as well. He wasn't a fan of MMA at the beginning, but has turned full circle because of his experiences as a fighter in the cage at Fight for Change last year in November 2019. Let's welcome him on from 2213, also professional storyteller, Haresh Deol. Hi, Haresh, how are you?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Right. Okay, we've already got a few guys saying hello. There's Emmanuel, Tanya saying go Collee. Johan Wong. Guess who's the more like popular one in this show? Johan Wong saying hello. Andreas Soto saying can't wait. Andreas from IMMAF. He's the guy who's in charge of all the social media. So you don't like what he's doing on social media, don't look for me. Look for Andreas, okay? And of course, IMMAF saying thank you for highlighting this topic, Masma. Of course, this is a very serious issue. So but guys, relax. It is a discussion amongst us, and also for our audiences to understand what MMA is all about. Of course, the main topic is MMA a sport. So I will let Dan take over and take it away, Dan.
Well, okay. So this is a very hot topic, and I've been doing a lot of reading when it comes to this matter, MMA as a sport or is it entertainment? Because, you know, the hot debate of this usually comes between amateur and pro, and we're going to get into it later on. I think we've done quick with the introductions. However, I would like to ask each and every one of our guest panel here about what is MMA to you? What do you see MMA? And I want to ask Colleen this, the first question, because you're an athlete yourself. So
Yeah.
what's MMA?
For me, like, I feel MMA is definitely a sport because we really put in the effort. And like, I even kind of did research, like, what is a sport? A sport is basically activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against each other. And that's exactly what MMA is. We are competing against each other as well. And I don't discount the fact that there's a huge entertainment into MMA as well, because for me, I watch MMA as well, and not only I see it as a sport, it is very entertaining as well. So, but in terms of development of this sport, I would call it a sport because you require so much skill and technique just to achieve a certain level as well. Like, I come from obstacle racing, and you still need technique, you still need skill, and converges to MMA, it's exactly the same. That's what you need still. So I definitely consider it a sport, but I do not discount the fact that it is also entertainment.
Now, here's a question that I want to ask to Haresh. You know, now obviously this is a sport. Now, I think Rashid mentioned earlier that before this you were quite, you know, on the negative side of MMA. I think you kind of looked away towards it. And what made you turn?
Well, to be honest, in the earlier part of my introduction towards MMA, it was more of a sport that I saw as just being very bloody, very gory. And I think that it was projected in that way by a particular organizer, you know, at that particular time. And I believe that narrative that was set at that time failed to really educate the masses about what the sport really is. And when you actually understand it better, it's just another form of martial art. Now, to answer your question, what changed my mind was when I left my previous establishment to set up my own news website. I had a little bit of free time, and I told myself, if you're going to dislike something, might as well you understand it first before disliking it. And you know, I tried it, and it really changed my mind, because it was the simple, petty things in martial arts, especially in MMA, that really changes your perception towards the activity. I will answer whether it's a sport or not later, but into this activity simply because you may consider this petty, yeah, but the simple fact of removing your shoes, the respect, the bowing, the tapping of hands before you start something, and with the amount of aggression that you have, but yet you keep it in check and in control at all times while rolling on the mat. I mean, that says a lot. So to me, that is the pure definition of MMA. not so
So-
much of what is projected on TV.
Looking towards it, quite
Yeah.
kind of really close to the whole martial art perspective, lah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question will be towards Isobel. Within the lines of what is MMA to you as well, what's your opinion in mixed martial arts?
As some Colleen and Haresh were saying, I think it really essentially starts in the gyms, and it's the hard work, it's the discipline, it's the drilling, it's the commitment, the fact that people are kind of living and breathing and putting hours of dedication into it. But for some people, it's almost like a kind of discipline, the good diet, the other sacrifices people are making in their lives. It's got all those elements of a sport, but I think that the gyms are the heart and soul of MMA.
Okay. And obviously, ask the same question finally, Hyder, to you. You've been around with one championship and you covered for Mma as well. So you've seen MMA
Yes.
evolve in Malaysia, especially in Southeast Asia as a whole. So to you, what's your opinion to mixed martial arts?
Okay, to tell the truth, that at first I too was like Haresh. I didn't quite fell in love with MMA when I first saw it, because since I was small, I used to like I love martial arts more. I used to practice karate and silat, and when I saw MMA, I was like had the same opinion as Haresh. I was like seeing it as a brutal sport and kind of more aggressive. But after seeing it a few times, seeing how One Championship promotes the sport, I came to love the sport. And anyway, if you ask me, I see MMA is a sport, but not just a sport. If you see the MMA has all the criteria of a sport, like individuals and teams competing with each other. But at the same time, you see all those teams, individuals, they come from a background from all sorts of martial arts, which is an art itself. And the art can be, they have values and honor and discipline in it from the martial arts background that they come up with. So also, MMA, we can see now that in some organizations, it does have a bit of entertainment in it, like the UFC, and of course, they have a bit of business. So if you ask me, MMA is not just a sport, but it can be a sort of a discipline values, and it comes with art and business and entertainment.
You see, what you just said is very similar to what Harry said about the whole respect kind of thing, but I do feel like that could be something from us in the Asian side where we all practice that, but it may not be the same like that if we go over to the US. I don't know if I'm correct on this, but MMA has kind of evolved in a way where it's meant to be just fighting. Now the thing is, what I want to ask next is that what constitute as a sport? Colleen, I think you talked about this earlier just a few seconds ago. Again, can you repeat about what do you think constitutes a sport? What constitutes a sport? Yeah.
Like for me, honestly, a sport is something when like two individuals, like everyone was saying, two individuals or a team competing against each other. But of course, just like in every other sport, let's put MMA aside for a moment. We talk about running, obstacle racing, badminton, everything. What are similarities is that they train hard, and also in a sport, a sport is something that anyone can also do. So you can still do MMA recreationally. There are people who do MMA just because they love it. They might not compete and they might not fight, but I know people who actually still do MMA recreationally. But they also, and then there's of course like I remember like just now I think Izzy was saying as well before this, and there's also like the aspect where some of us who want to take the sport to the next level, and we train hard and we put all our time in it to become elite athletes. So I believe like a sport is something that anyone can be a part of, regardless of which level you want to achieve. It just like anything, like running, it's a sport. If I want to run, I don't want to compete, I'm still running. It's still a sport. And MMA is still possible, where if you were learning jiu-jitsu or MMA, I do it for fun, it is still a sport.
So what do you think makes the difference between why do you think people want to argue this? If I think all of us can agree that mixed martial art in itself is a sport, right?
That's if you agree with like what Haresh and everyone was saying. Like if you look at the martial arts aspect of things, it is a sport. But then you have to think about how even MMA started. It was in the backyard, and everyone was just kicking and punching each other on the ground and everything like that. That was how it started. I think maybe that's why it gave a misconception of that MMA is kind of like a gladiator fighting or glorified street fighting, because that was the origin before.
Well, it is still prize fighting.
Yeah, it still is. Don't get me wrong, but right now it's been developed so much that you have rules, you have regulations, you have anti-doping, you have all these things, rules and regulation, and that's what every sport has. There's rules and regulation. If we talk about like glorified street fighting, there won't be any rules. It'll just be like UFC 1, all the whole but with no the weight divisions and everything. But it's developed so much that we have each our own weight divisions, and everyone has a rule set, and you have to follow the rule set or you get disqualified. And isn't that what a sport is, when everyone follows the rules and everyone competes safely against each other? I'm not saying MMA is safe, but it makes it safer.
I mean, rugby is not 100% safe. Football is not 100% safe. You can still break your legs in those sports.
Exactly.
You know, I think MMA has developed so much that referees have regulations and more experience into when to stop a fight. That's important. Izzy, you've been working highly in the media, the marketing for IMMAF. What's the difference between the media for IMMAF, where it's basically more amateur, and compare it to like professional productions?
Well, I mean, there's a vast difference. I think for one in the production and the brand side, and in the type of coverage that we get in the media. So on the brand and sports side, it's very, very purist. And if you compare something like amateur boxing compared with professional boxing, I guess we strip away a lot of those kind of prize fighting, more entertainment elements. So we don't have the ring girls, we don't have a lot of the razzmatazz, we don't have the trash talk. And it's stripped down to a purist tournament format. Respect is huge. Obviously, we've got the nation versus nations, we have all the national teams and so on. And they're amateur fighters. Some are supported by their national Olympic committees and have government funding. Others raise their own sponsorship, but we're not paying the fighters, so that takes away the prize fighting element. So that's the difference in how we project ourselves and the appearance of the sport. But in terms of actual media, it's quite a tricky space, I suppose, because we're not recognisable as a sport, so we don't have the mainstream sports pages covering it as such. But at the same time, we're not in that high-end entertainment fan space as well. So we're really sort of carving out our own niche and our own space, and it'll be interesting to grow as well where that audience is going to sit, because I think that we have potentially a large MMA fan base, as in the ones who follow the professional sport. But I can also imagine that there'll be a lot more people, particularly if you can get into the Olympic platform, people who might watch rugby and other types of sports who might not watch the professional end so much, who might be put off by the kind of smack talk and prize fighting elements, who would be more attractive to our tournament format.
The thing what I want to ask, because you talked about reducing the whole entertainment aspect of it, right? But right now, I think MMA is being viewed globally, mainly from the professional side, and I think the public right now is seeing more on the whole drama. Do you think drama is important in MMA?
I think drama always sells, doesn't it? And good stories sell. Mm-hmm. And I think if a sport's more established, like boxing, then it doesn't mean that people deny the fact that it's a sport. It's not really used against it. Boxing's been around a long time. And I think all the most entertaining superstar athletes are all great entertainers. Michael Jordan was a great entertainer. I mean, there's been a kind of huge amount on him at the moment with the Netflix series. Usain Bolt is a great entertainer. I mean, the athletes who are entertainers are gold dust in sport. But I think with MMA and with the amateur side, we're almost having to be whiter than white. We're having to be quite purist in our approach, because we're still fighting that battle for it to be accepted as a sport. So at the professional end, it clearly is a sport. All the work, all the discipline, that the athletes come up through the same gyms. They come up through the grassroots, through the amateur ranks, up to the pro leagues. But the perception is still very, very negative in a lot of countries. And I think that it's not helpful to the overall recognition of the sport, for the recognition of the grassroots of the sport, and for governments looking at the sport when they see some of the entertainment tactics. It's not to say that the sport shouldn't be entertaining. There's lots of plenty of sports like athletics, volleyball, so on, can be very, very entertaining, football and so on. But I think some of the more smack talky elements can frighten some people and put them off. So I think it's quite a difficult line, and fighting's like that. It's so visceral as well, and it's so primal. That's part of the appeal, but it's where we sit in that space.
You think that might also be the reason why people kind of like want to negate that out of the Olympics and stuff like that, because of the primal look of it?
I think it gets used against the sport, but we don't believe that's the main reason the sport's being opposed. So obviously boxing's in the Olympics, some Thai boxing's a recognised sport. We know that the reason for MMA being blocked from the Olympic movement is purely for political reasons. But they will use these things as an excuse. They'll draw attention always to the negative. So it's just unhelpful. It can be very unhelpful, the negative entertainment aspect.
Because honestly, I think IMMAF is doing a tremendous job at keeping this as a sport. Sport, and truly is, like what you say, grassroots of the sport. Because there are other sports out there, martial arts, where they allow professionals to come and still compete in the amateurs, and they can go to the major world championships and stuff like that. So I think it's great that IMMAF doesn't allow that. Yeah, because once you step onto pro, you've gone pro. Next up, I want to talk about a bit more local stuff. So Hyder, Haresh, and Colleen, what do you, I think I'll start this off with Hyder. Do you think that MMA, because MMA is growing really fast and it's grabbing a lot of attention of like a lot of the millennials? I wouldn't say the youngsters, like the youth just yet. Do you think that it is killing off some of our traditional martial arts in Malaysia?
Well, personally, I don't think it's killing off. I do see a lot of people still practicing the traditional martial arts, like all those silas and karate and stuff. And in a way, because they use it, those traditional martial arts, as a foundation for them to learn more about MMA. For me, as I see it.
You do some silat, right?
Yes, I did some last time. Yes.
Okay. From silat to MMA, right? From silat to MMA right now, do you think that if more people were to understand MMA, do you think like the traditional side people would start to care less for normal martial arts because they'll just do everything, then they'll just do MMA?
I don't know. I don't think that I see that right now, because I still see people practicing both MMA and also traditional martial arts, because I've been doing a program last time called Fight Zone. So I see a lot of people still doing practicing those traditional martial arts, like all those karate, silat, and wushu and judo and stuff. But at the same time, some of them from those martial arts, they dabble into MMA to test the skills, maybe into making themselves grow a bit more about doing martial arts.
Okay. Next to Haresh was you've done a lot of sports coverage, don't you? And what's the difference when you do sports coverages for? What do you think is the difference when you have to cover for like other sports and then compare it to MMA?
Okay, Daniel, before we go even into that conversation, let me just take you from what Izzy had mentioned. And, it's at the end of the day, let's go back to the topic. Is MMA a sport? And like what Izzy mentioned about the acceptance to the Olympic movement. Now, let's go back to the history books. In the ancient Olympics, there was something called pancration. I don't know if I pronounced it right.
Pancration, yeah.
Yeah, there are various ways to pronounce it, but yeah, anyway, it's a martial art. It combines both boxing and wrestling. And if you ask me personally, and at that time, it was the much anticipated event. It was the best event to test an athlete's strength. Now, if you ask me today, I would like to say, or I would like to view MMA as an evolution of that particular event. And I don't understand why, if in the ancient Olympics, something like that was accepted and was placed right at the top of all the events. It was the blue ribbon event, so to speak. But today in the Olympics, the 100 meters is the blue ribbon event. Now, there are some conversations. People say that, it's entertainment. That whole sports has to be entertaining. If it's not entertaining, it's not sports. The reason why people switch on to a sporting event is because they want to be entertained. Whether it's football, whether it's badminton. We speak about dramas. We've got the dramas of Datuk Lee Chong Wei and Lin Dan. We've got the whole drama there. We've got the drama of Ronaldo and Messi in football. Who is the better player? Who makes more? Who was the first billionaire? And it's the same with MMA. Now, I feel sad is because it is I don't even know why we're having, is MMA a sport? Because it's definitely a sport. And if something like esports, and no disrespect to esports fans, but if e-games and esports is accepted at the Southeast Asian Games, why not something like MMA? Because both are equally entertaining, both can equally resonate with the youths. And if you go back to the Olympic Charter and the Olympic movement, the reason why F1 is not part of the Olympics is because in the Olympic Charter and in the Olympic movement, any form of physical activity will be part of the Olympics, not motorized. It must be physical, using your hands, using your legs, using any part of your body, but it cannot be in a motorized assistant. So equestrian is accepted because it's not a motorized vehicle, it's a horse. So, yeah. Why not MMA? So I think I would like to help Izzy push the narrative that why we should get MMA into the Olympics.
So the arguments of that. Sorry, the arguments of the MMA is an entertainment comes, I think, directly from the professional side, and I think is what's hindering a lot of things, pushing forward for MMA. As like,
why do you say it's hindrance? I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrespect anyone here, but why do you say do you call it a hindrance? Why shouldn't it be seen as the catalyst for the sport, meaning that it has placed the sport to the eyes of the world, but yet it will not. I mean, you've got to admit that thanks to this professionally organized MMA tournaments, you've got the eyeballs, Today, the sport is big. The sport is even big in Malaysia and many parts of the world. So how can we then push this to the grassroots?
The thing what I was about to say was that why I'm saying professionals is because the whole concept of prize fighting and super fights, and the secret and the key word right here is super fights, is when a lot of pro fighters, they get to jump queue. Where ranking doesn't matter. I mean, there is ranking over there, but sometimes you see in various organizations, people at number 7, and then people at number 7, then suddenly they've been given a chance to fight against a contender. The rankings is, about it. They just don't follow it. I think that's what's making it a problem for it to like. I think that's the perception of the MMA is more of an entertainment, is the concept of super fights and the concept of pay-per-views. Yeah. And Colleen, I think we talked about this earlier as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier, and what do you think about the whole pay-per-view thing and trash talking?
Like, okay, everyone has a different aspect of things. Like, if you notice the Asian side of MMA, the importance of like really be humble and respectful, it is more towards the Asian culture, which is why you see the Asian side of MMA, the importance of having that will probably take you further in MMA in a professional scene. Whereas if you talk about in the Western civilization, where being like, like WWE, where the trash talking and all that is what garners people's attention, because like, as we said before, drama and all that is what people love to see. People love to see conflict. It's like, if you see a video just randomly on social media, YouTube, whatever, if you see a very chill video of like a dog walking, and if you suddenly see some violent image, which one will you be like, oh, what is that? Most people will probably say that the little slightly violent image or the slight conflict is what they would probably stop to see. And for perspective of the MMA fighter, the system is such is that when you sell more pay-per-views, you get more money. So if we're talking about like, as an athlete, I'm doing this sport because I love this sport, but I also need to eat. So if this sport requires me to like do all these little things to create entertainment for people to watch, just to buy pay-per-views so that I can feed my family. Like, if you think of it that way, that's why sometimes like some of us do it. And like, I'm not discrediting anything, because as like we mentioned before, because of this, MMA is watched everywhere. I know my friends who don't fight. They don't do a single martial art. But when you talk about MMA, they're like, oh, like I know about this person. I know about Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, and all that. But they've never watched a fight in their life. But they will know what is MMA. It's like saying like any other sport. And again, with the pay-per-view and all that, you have to look at the aspect of also the fighters. How are we getting paid? What is the system as a professional? How are we getting paid? Are we getting paid per fight just like that? Or are we, the reason why there's all this is because it gives fighters the incentive as well. Because most of the time they say, you sell more tickets, we give you more money.
You see, that's the thing. I have a quote here from John Fitch, who is currently a Bellator fighter.
Yeah.
And he used to fight in the UFC. Now he says MMA right now is it's pro wrestling without the predetermined outcome. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
It's a frustrating thing to be bound to these promoters. You never know when you're going to fight or if you're going to get a fight. And if it's a good fight, there's no merit system at all. It's all about entertainment. They're just putting on a show. It's a show. So
True.
yeah.
True.
So that's
I
why
do
the ranking system thing that I was talking about.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Like, I understand, because like in amateurs we have like in IMMAF we have like a ranking system, a proper ranking system where you fight the next person above you, and then of course you climb the ranks. And I think like that system is great if you can put it into the professional side. But I think maybe because in the professional scene you need the entertainment, but at the same time they may be focusing too much on trying to get more eyeballs, that they may have forgotten that these fighters are also athletes and it is a sport as well. Like, it is possible, because sometimes you see the people in the high ups that the one creating the system, they themselves sometimes are actually just businessmen. They are not fighters sometimes. I'm not saying all, but it could be because of that they look at it as a business point of view, and that makes the fighter suffer.
All right, thank you.
Sorry,
you,
I'm itching. I'm itching.
Yeah, I know. Harish,
Sorry.
I was watching Harish.
Sorry,
before
I'm sorry.
no.
No offense.
Before all of you say anything, I just want to say thank you very much, Dan, for warming them up, because I'm coming in after this. Sorry, have your say first, and then
I'm sorry.
I'll come in. No. Thank you.
No, don't apologize. The reason why you're here is to exchange views, and this is what I would like to just say. Yeah, why are we so fixated what the other organizers? To them, they are just milking on the popularity of the sport. Granted, we have to thank them for actually promoting the sport, but as far as I'm concerned, it is a sport, and the International Federation, which Izzy is part of, and Masma is part of, that they are the guardians of the sport. Full stop. So whatever professional league or tournaments or competitions that we see, that is outside of the realm of the structured sports scene. In this case, MMA. So as far as I'm concerned, there's only the international body, and that's it. Everyone else is just helping. They're part of the ecosystem, but the International Federation is the one that is dictating, that is ensuring that the sport grow from the grassroots to the top level. That's all. Sorry if I
it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense.
No, I mean, I get your point. I really do get your point, but I think, like I said, the whole argument of whether MMA is a sport or entertainment, I think it comes from there, from the professional side.
Okay, let's take that back slightly. Let's go back. I wouldn't say back to the beginning, but still on this narrative is MMA sport. Izzy, let me quickly speak to you. Because MMA, for those audiences out there, MMA did start as a professional outfit, the actual sport, and I will call it sport, because anything to do with boxing, and boxing came from where striking, anything to do with that is a sport. Now, it had a very storied past. On the amateur side, we had two world bodies initially. We had WAMA and we had IMMAF. And for a number of years, there was this clash. And that's why the Olympic movement said, you can't have two international bodies. So we amalgamated into one. And now that we are doing it, now we have, I wouldn't say problems, but issues now within the Olympic movement itself. Can you just tell us what that is all about for the audiences out there? This whole story from when we became one, and did I just say one? Became an organization, an amateur organization, to the problems that we're having, and why we're having this campaign, as in IMMAF, to get people to do this petition to have MMA as a sport. Izzy?
So IMMAF was founded in 2012, and the World Mixed Martial Arts Association was founded around the same time, and that was to develop the amateur sports, the grassroots side of it, with the aim of getting the sport recognised formally by the Olympic movement, and the vision of getting the sport into the Olympics. And I think what's interesting about the conversation we've just been having now is there's been a lot of focus on the perception of the sport and how much it's a pure sport, how much it's entertainment. But more essentially for us, the reason we need it to get acknowledged politically as a sport and by the right bodies is that gives a lot of different kind of rights and access to participants of the sport world over. So that's the kid who goes into a gym, that's vulnerable people in gyms, it's fighters being able to get access to medical services, it's being able to get sports insurance. It's all those things that people who practice other sports have. So for us, it's about the rights of the participant. That's more important to us than the sport getting into the Olympic Games. That'll be lovely. That's razzmatazz. And as we've been discussing the entertainment side of the sport, MMA doesn't need the Olympics. The Olympics should probably want MMA. But what we do is we recognise as a sport. So that was the work that IMMAF started and the World Mixed Martial Arts Association started separately, coming from two different spaces. And through IMMAF's application to get recognised by the Olympic movement, we were told that there was a rival governing body who was making an application and that we needed to come to some kind of agreement with them because they could only acknowledge one sport. Now, we found out later that actually WAMA were invited by the Olympic movement to come in and make that application, and they hadn't even completed the process. So that was kind of orchestrated by the Olympic movement, but actually coming together with WAMA, we continued that process, we merged, and we've become a stronger federation for it. And we brought in brilliant people from, both sides. And so that's been a huge success, but it's basically been a drawn out political game. So it's a number of combat sports within the Olympic movement we've replied 3 times now. One time they lost our application. They told us about 9 months later, oh, we've lost your application. You need to put it in again. So there keeps being these different kind of hurdles. And we just feel that they're going to keep drawing out this game for as long as they possibly can to prevent MMA coming in and threatening their space, I suppose it is. These other combat sports are worried about the fact that more kids and youths are coming across to MMA. They're worried about protecting their spot in the Olympic Games or their opportunity to get into the Olympic Games. So that's what it's really about. So the vision or the image of MMA, it doesn't help when something negative happens because they can use it as another excuse. But we know that's not really the reason.
Right. Okay. Hyder, again, you have seen how the sport has grown, and you did mention, as covering it for this number of years. You've seen the youth movement in terms of MMA have grown. We know we have top fighters in the amateur leagues in South Asia where they fight. We have the top 5 fighters at the moment in Southeast Asia in terms of amateur. Now, as a sport, and it is the sport, and I'm sure you see it as a sport. Do you think that we as IMMAF is talking about Olympic movement, do you think something like MMA should be introduced into SUKMA or even as the SEA Games? Because, like Haresh said earlier, we had esports being introduced into the SEA Games, but do you think that there's enough cause for Malaysia to be able, and why?
Okay. Personally, I think yes. MMA should be included in SUKMA and Asian Games also. But to make it as introduction, I think we should first introduce it in SUKMA first, and maybe after a few years, then we should include it.
Oh dear.
Hang on. We've sort of lost him there, but it's okay. Well, hopefully we can get him back after that. Haresh, literally the same question that I've asked Hyder, and obviously you've tasted the cage before. Before I do that, I would like to put this photo on. That was your first ever experience in the
That's
cage.
me losing.
Champions of Mma.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, Carrot.
Sorry, Hyder is back. Hyder is back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go on, Hyder.
From the hi. Hello. Hello. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. From the first day I've covered Mma, and from Mma 1 and Mma 2, I've seen a lot of potential athletes who eventually turn into pro, into entering like a world championship, or even going to Ultimate Beatdown, or going to other MMA organizations. And I think those are the potential athletes, and that can be develop into going to SUKMA or compete in Asian Games. And I believe we have the potential. We have the athletes that are good enough to compete in those kind of competitions.
All right. Now, Haresh, obviously, boxing had its troubles in the beginning as well before it was allowed into mainstream sports. Can you tell us a bit about the history of how boxing got into the Malaysian Games and Southeast Asian Games, and why shouldn't MMA have that kind of path as well?
I think in any martial arts, it's always the fear of martial arts is always seen as being, something that would cause more damage or more harm than your other traditional sports. But I think many people fail to realize that in a controlled environment, martial arts is just as safe as every other sport. Now, we've seen and read reports about how certain, including the FA in England, they have decided to ban heading for youth footballers, saying that it causes dementia in the long term. Now, every sport will have its own issues, its own challenges. But at the same time, if you take it into the context of MMA or even martial arts, you're protected. The headgears, the shin pads, the gloves. So with a little bit more of education, boxing was introduced into the mainstream simply because people were educated. You need to, wrap your hands first. You need to wear a certain, ounce, gloves of a certain ounce, and then you fight in a controlled environment with a referee. The same can be done with MMA. But to get the buy-in of the stakeholders, there has to be a lot of education. That it needs to start from the youth, because if you don't get the buy-in from the young, they will eventually be the conversation starters. They will eventually be the future. And if you don't get the buy-in from them, then you will never ever see the sport actually grow from generation to generation. And that is something that we can actually learn from e-games, because e-games actually found their niche within the youngsters, who will then take these conversations when they become 30, 40, 50. I mean, we all speak about Counter-Strike. I mean, Rashid and I played Counter-Strike for leisure.
Thanks
Today it's
for
a SEA Games
revealing my
sport.
age.
Yeah, today it's a SEA Games sport, and we can somehow relate to it, although we like it or not. That's a different argument. Daniel is sitting on a very comfortable gaming chair, so that clearly shows that he's a gamer. And he's smiling. So yeah,
everything.
but what I'm trying to say is that e-games has managed to penetrate into the future today. So I believe MMA should also do the same. And what I saw at Fight for Change 2019, thanks to Masma, was that it was so enlightening. And you know what? Many people who attended the event were actually mesmerized by the underage tournaments. Not me losing, but they were more interested in seeing the kids, how they were battling it out. And they say it was fun in a weird way.
Yeah, with
No,
our
it was
amateur rule
yeah.
sets. Yes.
Correct. So, you get the buy-in of these people, you get the buy-in from parents, and eventually, just like boxing, it will be accepted into every level of society. And for the SEA Games, you need to get the buy-in from the member member nations, to ensure that they have a similar program. But you know what? If the SEA Games can have really traditional, like boat racing, and the shuttlecock that you try and balance and see how many times you can do it. If those kind of weird games can be part of SEA Games, I don't understand why MMA can't.
Right. Sort of lost Hyder for a while, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Colleen, obviously you're part of the youth movement. Yeah, don't worry. Age is still is on your side. Yay. Okay, but you see, what's the interest of kids, or rather the youth in our part of the world? You see a lot more. Do you think there'll be a lot more kids and youth coming up to take up MMA?
Of course, like I like to be positive, that I would say yes, I would hope. So flat out, yes, I would hope there'll be, but I do believe that there is a next generation coming up as well, because you have so many sports as well in Malaysia. I mean, like martial arts in Malaysia that kids actually compete in, and I do see the next generation coming up. But again, as Haresh said really, really well, is that they need to be educated, because I've met a lot of 16-year-olds where their perception of MMA isn't exactly as a sport, except it was an excuse to beat people up. So glorified street fighting, essentially, instead of looking at it as a sport, and you need to respect each other in the cage and everything like that. And I think exactly the same. It is just education. And if we can go into schools and explain to them that MMA is a sport that even children, when I say children, I mean 12 to 16, is the age that you can still strive and you can still learn and grow in the sport without causing any sort of bodily harm, in a sense that it will be similar to any other sport they play, if be it football, basketball, badminton, whatever it is. Again, I think if we can educate the children, because I know that there's a lot out there that see it and they want to do it. It's just a lot of times it's the parents that stop them. This is my experience, because I've spoken to a lot of kids that are doing jiu-jitsu like since they were young, and then of course they go into boxing and all that as they grow older. And then I asked them, like, do you want to do MMA? And they're like, yes, we want to do MMA. But I said, like, why don't you? And their answer 90% of the time is, my parents do not let me. And I feel like if we don't, like as they say, if we don't educate the older generation, the younger generation still might not be able to grow. Because we here on this side of the world, we respect our elders so much. Like Asians, it is within us. If our parents say no, we just like, okay. We just bow our head silently and say okay. And if we're able to educate the parents, maybe these kids that are interested, maybe from right now the percentage may seem like 20%, might grow up to maybe 60-70%, just because of that education of the older generation, not just the younger generation.
All right. Okay. So on that note, Izzy, of course, one of the I suppose objectives for IMMAF, especially it is for MASMA, is youth development. Again, that's the education part where we talk about parents being able to understand it. And we were going to have that certification course, which involved not only coaching, because we don't have certified coaches in this part of the region. We wanted to have it in Malaysia, and we were going to have this unique certification where it was a level 1 coaching and youth, and that would help basically, one, educate the youth and educate, as Colleen says, the parents. We had the same problems earlier with rugby 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I see the same problems with MMA now. Now, IMMAF has initially, we had the first Youth World Championships, successful. Why was that done? And what was because that, to me, is the foundation for Olympics in 2028.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, so having the youth competition pathway is another aspect of having the development pathway for competitors and participants. So you've got the education side, the licensing side, and then the competition. So when we launched the first championships last year, we didn't really have any sense of what kind of uptake there would be. I mean, it could have been a very small event. We weren't really sure. We know that there's kids out in gyms everywhere. It's part of the reason we're pushing for sport recognition. We're pushing for proper governance, for assurance. But we went out, had our first competition, and had 250 or more kids signing up. And the level of skill was phenomenal. Some of these kids must have been training for some years, but they were incredible, and you could just see the kind of the depth of talent there coming up, and from so many different countries around the world as well, from the States, from Russia, from Asia, from around, and so that was one. It was really, really encouraging, because it shows that the demand's there, but it also shows why there's a real responsibility for, if not the Olympic movement, for governments to recognise the sport and give us support in pushing for governance of gyms and coaches and so on. Because without that, we haven't got the power to, one, ensure that the youth are getting really, really good training and getting the best out there, but also to protect them from coaches. Anybody can set up a gym in lots of countries, and anybody can set up any competition, and there's no structure around that. So there were two aspects. I think there was that really kind of exciting side of how popular it is, but also just that us feeling like we've really got to double down on pushing for this sport recognition. Right. And Haresh, I know obviously after Fight for Change, we had the Olympic Council Malaysia President, Datuk Seri Nozar Zakaria, who turned up to
to witness you get beaten in 20 seconds or whatever it was, 30. Sorry,
Hey.
a minute a bit. Sorry, on a more serious note. But he, like you said, he enjoyed watching the age group bout, and he gave his endorsement. Now, do you think? Again, I don't think we're any of us arguing here to whether to say MMA is a sport or not. I think we've pretty much agreed amongst ourselves that it is a sport. Whether it's an entertaining sport or not, it is still a sport. I don't think there's any argument in that. Whether the rest of the world or the Olympic organization believes that, then that's something that I think is they're fighting a losing battle. I feel. However, do you think do you think we will get a lot of these countries will get endorsement for their local or their respective countries from the Olympic movements that will pressure, do you think, the OIC?
Why not? If the IOC themselves are educated about what MMA is, if they themselves get off their, wherever they're sitting and actually come to the gyms and they understand the sport better. Look, I would understand, let's take squash, for example, yeah? Malaysia has been lobbying for squash to be part of the Olympics for a very, very, very long time. In fact, if squash had been part of the Olympics, we'd won a gold medal through Datuk Nicole David. But it never happened simply because the sport was not widely played across the globe. Now, despite the justification, despite the international body making squash sexy in a sense that not in the feminist way, but in a sense of placing the courts outside beautiful landmarks like the Egypt, in Cairo, the pyramids, at KLCC and stuff like that. Yet it just didn't get their attention. BMX instead caught their attention.
Golf.
Yeah, in China, remember the Beijing Olympics where BMX was part of, So now coming back to MMA, it is, look, there's a lot of justification, and I believe there's a lot of justification why it could be, and if it is part of the Olympic calendar, it will help the sport in so many ways, in government endorsement, like what Izzy mentioned earlier. Now, it is very important simply because when you get accepted by the highest body in the world, it makes governments will then realize how important the sport is. It will then trickle down to understanding that the sport itself will generate income for the country. It's the whole sports industry ecosystem. It is doing so, but yet because it is not being endorsed and because it is not being seen publicly by the decision makers that it is a sport per se, which should not be the case simply because we shouldn't be even having this debate. It is a sport to begin with, and period. But the minute it gets accepted, it makes life easier for MMA to actually promote itself at the grassroots to the national level, even beyond. So I really do hope that IMMAF would actually IMMAF, sorry, would actually win this battle. Perhaps you could headlock somebody in IOC and get MMA to be part of the Olympics. I would do that for you guys, man.
Okay.
just get a bunch of the youth and then just put them in a room to be good to go. They'll just be the most vicious people in the world.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Colleen, for that. I know you haven't had a fight for a long time. Now, Hyder, on more local scene, of course, and I know I have to address the elephant in the room here. Of course, there's MASMA is the only governing body for MMA in Malaysia. We are recognized by the Sports Commission, but there is also Gamma, and you've heard of Gamma, and Gamma have been making noises around the world. But they haven't had any headway coming into. Although they did have a championship down south in Singapore. Now, do you think it doesn't matter whether it's controversial? To me, that's beside the point. Do you think that would hinder us in terms of what MASMA is doing? And I have spoken to some of the people from Gamma, and I have said, look, we move forward, we move together. Because in terms of the amateur side of MMA, there needs to be one governing body. Now, what are your thoughts on whether if Gamma does come in and stake a claim, as someone who's been observing MMA and of course amateur MMA in this country, what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
I think when it comes to governing bodies for sports, it happens in some, for example, like taekwondo, and this WTF and ITF, and then this GDF, and there have been disputes between these governing bodies until at some point the Malaysian decided not to send its what you call the contingents to the Olympics or to the Asian Games or whatever. So in terms of MMA, I think it's important that MASMA becomes the sole governing body for the Malaysian, at least, to bring forward the sport in Malaysia, so that and of course, for example, like Gamma, if it interferes in stuff like this, it will hinder the what's happening in what's going on in the Malaysian scene and stuff like that.
All right. Okay. Now, Izzy, I know you were itching to answer that as well. Let's hear from you before I ask the question for all of you out here. Okay, go on, Izzy.
Yeah, really, because Gamma don't have a legitimate claim at the moment, because you only could have one application into the Olympic movement at the same time, at any one time, which they don't. We've been applying for a number of years. We've got an application we're still waiting for an answer to, but also there's a number of criteria you have to meet. So you need to have a certain number of years of accounts, you need to have a certain number of general assemblies, you need to have a track record. So it's actually quite technical. You need to show that you've had an anti-doping program for a number of years. So you can go and make as many public statements as you like, and maybe in a few years' time, Gamma will have a very good track record, and maybe they will also be legitimate. But right now, they actually don't tick the boxes to become an international governing body. So they've still got the same work to put in that IMMAF has been putting in since 2012. So I don't. It's not really an apples for apples comparison. I thought that was important to put in there.
All right, now I'm going to turn everything over on its head, because we've got this very interesting comment from Thomas Knudsen, who says, why Olympics has never done anything good for martial arts? Now, why are we so fixated on wanting to get to the Olympics?
I think Izzy said it really well just now, because like she said, the reason why was that she wants, like, we all want it to be recognized as a sport, because do you know, okay, this is my experience. I want to get insurance for my training, and for like me as an athlete, I want to get insurance to ensure that if I get injured in a fight in doing my sport, I will have a medical backup to take care of me. God forbid I need to get surgery or anything like that. And I've been trying for years to get an insurance that will cover that. Every single insurance company I have ever approached said the minute they find out I was an MMA fighter, they say, no, we will not cover you. They will say no, because you are intentionally putting yourself out there and, in your sport. So you are a huge liability. And so why should we insure you? But then you look at all the other sports like rugby and all that, people get hit all the time. They take impact all the time. And those sports get insurance coverage, whereas MMA, they say, oh, because you're putting ourselves out there, they don't want to insure us. So there's so many times where I've got injured for a fight. I'm blessed that when I did it, I was with IMMAF, and the medical team was so good, they took care of me. But imagine if it is a sport, every single tournament, every single event, MMA event, there will always be, you don't have to worry about if you have a broken nose or anything. Like, you don't have to worry like, oh no, I need to do surgery. How much money can I afford to come out? Like, if it's recognized as an Olympic sport, like just at there, us as athletes will be taken care of so much better just because of that aspect of safety. Even I've gone to so many events to fight, and I come out with a concussion, and I had no one to check me. I only found out I had a concussion the day after I woke up, and I had a massive headache. And I'm just like, what is this? When there's supposed to be someone checking. When you look at every other sport, when someone gets injured in a 100-meter race, there is someone there with a stretcher just to take them. In MMA, no, we get knocked out. And then in amateur, we get knocked out in some events, and they're just like, oh, is he awake? Oh, he's awake, he's good.
All right, okay. So that's from an athlete's point of view. Haresh?
Yeah. No, Thomas asked why Olympics has never done anything good for martial arts. Mention one. Thomas, not too sure where you're from, but in Malaysia, let's say, for example, if an athlete participates in the Olympics, it's a different ball game altogether for the athlete, simply because, number one, government grants. All athletes that prepare for multi-sports events, they get some form of funding. So that helps a lot. Number two, when the sport is part of the Olympics, it is well accepted within the other layers of society. Number three, to market the sport and the athlete. Now, a lot of brands prefer to invest in an athlete who is part of the Olympic movement, or they would say an Olympian, compared to an athlete who is not an Olympian. It's something that even Colleen would agree with me. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not just about the fixation of getting the sport into Olympics. If it gets into Olympics, well and good, but I think it's more of the spillover effect of how you can actually get or milk the opportunity of it being part of the Olympic movement.
Izzy?
Yeah, just to kind of break it down a bit more, so within the Olympic movement, we're actually applying now to a body called the Global Association of International Sports Federations. And outside sports administration, most people haven't heard of them, but that's the body that decides if people are recognised as a sport or not, and they're within that kind of Olympic movement. So you have to be recognised by them to apply then to the IOC or to get into the Olympic Games. So where we're stuck is trying to apply to the Global Association of International Sport Federations. And the problem is that a lot of national Olympic committees and governments in different countries around the world will listen to them to tell them whether or not something is a sport. So it's affecting the rights of athletes, it's affecting the rights of anybody who wants to take part in that sport in a country. So I'm fudging it a bit by saying the Olympic movement, that's covering this body which sits within that movement, but it's not actually the IOC itself. But since nobody's heard of them, it's easier to kind of talk about it in one, but there's a lot of crossover, and there's people in the IOC who sit on that body, and then some of these people sit on WADA. It's one family. So there's two things there. It's the sport getting recognised, which is fundamentally important. And then the next thing is, yes, if it does get into the games, then as Haresh says, then there's all the access to Olympic funding that athletes can have. They can be part of a national team, and there's that spillover effect. I'd say that's less important to IMMAF, but it would still be, a dream or an ideal to aspire to.
Yes, because obviously any sport. Hyder, you've gone all sideways on us. So but we'll sort him out. Don't worry, he's still fine. Thank you very much. Thomas Newson is from Denmark, Haresh. But thank you very much, Thomas, for your comments. There we go. It's quite insightful as well. I was going to ask him about that. So basically, we do talk about that wanting that big dream of getting to the Olympics, and of course, Haresh expressed how prestigious has been for Olympians to be able to because beyond the sport, they've gotten other careers from it, and it's helped them further their own not just sporting careers, but other stuff that have recognition, not just in Malaysia but beyond as well. Now, again,
the comments.
What is the biggest problem we have? Okay, Hyder's back. Is Hyder back? Hi, Hyder. Can you hear me? Okay.
He's a bit off today.
Okay, no worries. Okay, well, never mind. Now, what is really the problem here, though? I mean, we've talked about it, but what really is the problem? Why is there? I mean, we've had Danzain talk about. We've had Kerif talk about it, but what's the biggest barrier right now? Who is it? Politics?
Definitely from our point of view, yes. From years of campaigning, feedback we've had, personal conversations, through the official feedbacks, correspondence, and so on. So where we're up to now is GASIF, who was our application to. They replied to us earlier in the year and said that that finally a group of combat sports actually officially put forward an objection. And their objection now, after the first time they put forward a formal objection, is that MMA is not compatible with their sport. So somehow our rules don't quite, whether there's too much crossover or whether there's a conflict with their sport. They've not been too clear on that. So we've submitted our counter argument. And then obviously with the COVID lockdown, there's been a delay in meetings and so on, and we're still waiting. But we're just not confident this is going to be dealt with in the right manner, because we've been through for years taking recommendations, been kicked back to the curb, started again. We also have a legal case in Switzerland against the World Anti-Doping Association, who did not accept us as a signatory of the WADA Code, even though we meet all criteria. And they told us that is because the Global Association of International Sports Federation has advised us not to. So we have a legal case against them at the moment. And that's about political grounds. It's about competition laws. It's around all of that. So I think we have very clear evidence of what it's about at an international level.
Okay,
I might say something that may sound a bit conspiracy, because she like Izzy mentioned a bit of politics. I don't know. It's just a thought I had that maybe why the Olympic Council doesn't want to recognize MMA into the Olympics. Maybe is it because MMA is a combination of all and various different martial arts. And a lot of these martial arts are already in the Olympics, like Greco-Roman wrestling, boxing, and all the other martial arts that they had, judo and all that. So maybe it's because if MMA is put into the Olympics, that it may cause everyone to actually watch MMA more than the other martial arts. Because now we have one platform where you see 10 different martial arts instead of individually watching each one. And maybe like people watching Olympics might stop watching the others just so they could watch MMA if it's in the Olympics. It's just a bit of a conspiracy theory, but what if that is actually the case? And that's why maybe the other martial arts that are very traditionalist is like, no, we don't want MMA in, because maybe our fighters might go there, or maybe other people might end up watching watching MMA instead of watching their martial arts. Just like a conspiracy thought, maybe.
I think that has been like the view for the most time as well. Why like MMA is not in the Olympics, because of the fear of other sports. You know, if my fighter is doing taekwondo, or the fighter is doing boxing or something like that, right? But then MMA has that aspect too. So and they might be better off doing MMA, and then they just switch over. So I mean, I'm just saying that makes sense, even though it may be like conspiracy theory. That makes sense.
Well, interesting. Haresh and Izzy is coming from our younger panelists. That's their point of view. Haresh, you look like you were going to further comment on something.
No, what Colleen raised is actually a fact. It's not really a conspiracy theory or that sort. I think everyone becomes very territorial with their sport. That when you see something that jumbles everything up and is produced as another form of martial art, the fear is obviously there. I think this is where the international body and even locally the national body respective nations should actually work hand in hand with the various other martial arts federations to assure them that we are in this battle together. Now, I know it's easier said than done. Obviously, people will become very territorial. But that's another conversation that will take longer than an hour, I suppose. Now, Thomas, you're from Denmark, and I hope things are okay in Denmark. In Malaysia, the lockdown has just been lifted. So, and Thomas just mentioned that can anyone mention the Olympic champion of Taekwondo, wrestling, judo, boxing? No, no one. Why? Because no one cares. Thomas, we can also say the same about, do you know who won the 1,500-meter event? Do you know who won the Olympic, as in the pole vault event? Can we even name who won the marathon at the last Olympics? But if you want to come down and have that conversation, then it'll be, we'll just have this whole. And I understand where Thomas is coming from. We shouldn't be overly fixated with getting the spot in the Olympics. And I think I'm not going to speak on behalf of Izzy or the International Federation, but I think Izzy, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are also not overly fixated with the Olympics per se, but it'll be good if you guys are there. But yeah, it's about helping the sport, helping promote the sport, and helping governments understand the importance of the sport. And you see, I've repeated the fact that MMA is a sport 3 times. So I hope it's fine. I've finally answered the question of today's topic. Is MMA a sport? Yes, it is.
Now you know why he's my partner on my other show, because you got to have the yin and the yangs in this world, right? Okay, I will. Trying to see whether Hyder can come back, but I know we've gone over the 1 hour mark.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We're not going to go beyond the 1:30, so we're still okay with that. Now, there's definitely a side of a lot more comments on this, as you can see on our comments page. But we'll let them have that conversation because it's a sidebar note. Hi, Hyder. How are you now? Can you see us and hear us?
Yeah, that's it.
And Izzy's all the way in the UK, and so far so good. So I'm pretty happy that's happening. Now, Hyder, in terms of, do you think there's a lot of politics involved when it comes to? Well, we know there's a lot of politics in Malaysian sports, but with MMA, definitely a lot. I mean, it's a never-ending story with Malaysian sports. But with MMA, we've only been around obviously 6-7 years. How do you think? Because it's a very young sport, how do you think we should evolve in terms of moving our stuff forward for MMA?
Oh.
Yeah, he's freezing up.
I think it's lagging. Maybe you should let him turn on his fan so his laptop will be better. It's so sad. I think, and he can hear us. How well. Never mind. We'll keep him there. Dan, any final questions?
No, a lot of the questions that I had, actually, you said it. So
sorry. Always thinking ahead. But that's why take over second half.
Big anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised that we had clashing questions. But it's good to know, like what Haresh said. I mean, pretty much MMA is a sport. There's no more questions about it. I think the whole entertainment side was just a small little argument, and I personally thought it was gonna be something that was gonna more like a distracting factor for mixed martial arts to push ourselves into the Olympics. But I think well said by everyone, and we can all go back from this video or from this live, and accept that MMA is well endowed a sport.
Yes, definitely.
Is there any final words? What's IMMAF? I know you mentioned it, but moving forward, what do you expect from? Let's talk about the petition. How has that been going?
Yeah, we launched the petition a couple of weeks ago. Really, just to put our fight out into the public domain, and we're trying to rally as many signatures as possible. to openly campaign the IOC for the recognition of the sport. We have 14,000 plus signatures so far, and we're calling everybody, all fans, all supporters everywhere, please go to change.org/MMA is a sport and sign if you believe that MMA should be recognised and you believe that MMA participants should have the same rights as other sports participants. Thank you.
All right. Haresh, any final words? Hopefully we can get Hyder back for his final.
Well, Daniel, you kept saying about the whole debate that MMA is entertainment, it's scripted. Now, if indeed MMA was entertainment and scripted, let me put it this way: I would have won Fight for Change.
Well, what I didn't mean like scripted.
Okay, I lost, and I lost badly.
I don't think I would
yes.
have ever let you win anyway. So if it was scripted, it could have been
8 months of training just flushed down the toilet bowl within what, 2 minutes, something of
Less
that
than
sort.
that.
So yeah,
Less
so
than that.
that is sport. You know, where you train so hard and you think you have it within your reach, only to be humbled. That's sport. So I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, Hyder, any last words? Hopefully we can hear from you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can. I sound like
Sorry,
a Barack Obama. Yep.
Okay.
Any final words?
Unfreeze me.
I hear you. I'm sorry. It's just kind of, the audio is on and off.
Okay, never mind. Colleen?
I guess for everyone that's watching, like I love this topic so much, and for everyone that's watching, and for all the MMA fans, everyone who watches, supports MMA, and everything from amateur all the way professional MMA as a sport in general, thank you so much, because honestly, without the fans and support of other people as well, like MMA would not be able to survive. And for those that have been supporting the entire time, like as an athlete as well, thank you guys so much for constantly supporting us as a sport, because through all this, like a lot of issues that we're having, we do hope that this little forum like was really great for you guys as it was for us. And please do keep supporting us as we like kind of move along in this world, in the MMA world as well.
All right. Hyder, can you still hear us?
Yes.
Yep. Final words?
Final words. Okay. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I just want to add a bit about the drama you said about MMA.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Okay. For me, I think the drama is what sells the sport, and it adds up to the story. As a journalist, for me, I feel that in some sports you have to wait for the tournaments, and for if you want to cover about running, you have to wait for the Olympics and for the other sports. But for me, as a journalist, I never have run out of things to write about. You know, for example, the disputes, the storylines, the drama. Even on Twitter, even on Facebook, on Instagram, they have the arguments and storylines. So you can do those stuff as a story. You can sell them. And those people people want to know about the sports, want to know about what's the story, and want to follow up and eventually follow to watch their fights and stuff. And I believe that this stuff it's not that bad for the sport. It's what makes the sport grow and into a business, into entertainment, and it what sells it's something that sells the sport, and it has eyeballs. Yeah, for me I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, there we go. We got eyeballs. It's definitely a modern sport that is really rising in leaps and bounds. But thank you very much, Hyder. Yeah. Thank you, all our panelists, Colleen, Hyder, Haresh, and Izzy for joining Daniel and I for this show. It has been quite educational and insightful for a lot of us. Also, especially from all these different views that we've gotten, one who's never fought for once. We've got an athlete, we've got obviously a representative IMMAF, and also a veteran journalist who's covered MMA, and of course even a coach there, Daniel, and from a rugby playing president, I suppose. We're going to put it that way. But thank you for coming and on our show. It's been really, really good, and I wish you all luck. I wish IMMAF luck for getting into hopefully into getting into the Olympic movement. 2020 is still that dream that you can still hopefully ignite, and obviously, as you know, Masma is a member of that, and we're wholly behind you, especially on this part of the world as well. Haresh, looks like this whole conversation we're having it's prelude for a show for a topic that we should be talking about on the RSS of VHD. Sorry, I had to plug that in again. Yeah, sure. Maybe we'll get Izzy on as one of our guests.
Certainly, it'll be a delight.
Definitely have you and the other bosses as well, because it's a topic that I think that really requires to be out there. So yeah, that's another for another day. But on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. Thank you to all our audiences and those who've commented as well on our show. Do catch us every Monday for our show. Do support all your gyms out there now that it's open, and please stay safe and until all this shenanigans is over. From myself, Daniel, and on behalf of Masma, thank you, good night, and see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you. Bye.
Okay. Well, same person.
But we've already had some gatherings of family.
It's very sad because it's like my old flesh. I'm cutting off the hell out of me. It was eating at my soul.